Welcome back to Football Daily, where today, I'm doing my full 1 to 20 predictions. Alright, I did this for the first time last year, stunk the place out, didn't I? I'm going to go from 20 up to first, revealing my Premier League order as of August the 10th. I'm seeing some people copping out, doing this at the end of the transfer window. Grow up. Alright, 20th. I've gone for Sheffield United. Below Luton, yes. I think with the exit of Liam Dye, who was of course responsible for 24 of their goals last season, I don't see them being quick enough on transition. Not only on transition was Ndiaye great, in goal scoring creativity was he great, he was also great off the ball. His pressing numbers were off the charts. He was a pace setter for that side. And the second most intense presser in the side? Sander Berge. Also left the club. The Rock at the club, responsible for the most tackles and interceptions. The business has been pretty patchy up till now. Obviously, they've had financial problems in the past. The owner is still looking to sell. Huge pressure on Paul Heckingbottom. And it's no wonder I'm seeing Sheffield United fans online talking about how worried they are going into this season. Massive club, but I'm extremely concerned. 19th, I've gone for Luton Town. I think they will surprise some people. I don't think they're going to be nearly as bad as some people have claimed. You know, the recruitment team have done an unbelievable job at Luton to take them from the Conference to the Premier League. It's a really, really smartly run club. I expect some of their summer transfers to be excellent. But there's huge pressure still on Carlton Morris, isn't there, to score goals. Tom Lockyer, playing at the centre of the defence, is going to have to really up his game at Premier League level. And I just don't think they've got enough experience of the top tier. I think they've got 320 Premier League appearances in that squad. 230 of them come from Ross Barkley, who's not had a good time of it recently. I think the others come from Marvelous Nakamba. I think there's going to be slightly too much for this side to do, but I do think they've been smart with the recruitment, and when they drop back down to the Championship, they're going to have an excellent side, which is basically the plan, surely. 18th, I've got Wolves. Now, of course, they finished last season in 13th, but I'm just extremely concerned. I think people have forgotten how good a job Lopetegui actually did. You know, when he took over that side, they were flat bottom of the league. He took them up the table to 13th. Some okay recruitment in January, but this window feels like it's just been all over the place. I mean, you go through some of the outs: Neves, Moutinho, Collins, Giles, Cody, Jimenez, Costa. I don't see where the goals are coming from. You know, didn't score anywhere near enough goals. The worst production of any forward line in the league last season, and they haven't really added to it, which means there's massive pressure on Sasa Kaladzic, who's coming back from a huge injury, and he is quite an injury-prone striker. You know, even in his final season at Stuttgart, I think they finished 15th. Not a massive amount of appearances, 6 goals, consistent injury problems, pressure on him at the top end. Gary O'Neill coming in as well. I think Wolves fans are a bit nervous about that. He did a really good job keeping Bournemouth in the division, but is he the guy to take Wolves to the next level? You know, they've consistently finished around that mid-table under managers like Nuno, Lopetegui. Can Gary O'Neill do that again? I would be extremely worried if I was a Wolves fan. There's a lot of business to do between now and August the 31st, which means, inevitably now I've said this, Wolves are going to beat United on Monday, aren't they? Brilliant. 17th, as we stand today, I've gone for Everton. I mean, they've been hanging on by a thread in recent years, haven't they? Obviously, last season, they finished 17th as well, and they're really one goal away from relegation, if we're honest. Absolutely hanging on, the second worst attack in the league. I think by underlying numbers, XG had them as the biggest underperformers in the league. The strikers didn't take their chances. Calvert-Lewin couldn't stay fit. And I'm looking at the business so far. Danjuma, I actually think is a pretty good signing. Ashley Young, okay, probably a bit more of a versatile option, experience for Sean Dyche, but where are the goals coming from if Dominic Calvert-Lewin continues to be injured? You know, there is supposedly they're in talks with Ugo Ekitike. I think he's a massive prospect, but also potentially a big risk for a club that are battling relegation. Second worst defence in the league by expected goals against last season. Problems at Everton, and I don't feel like they've got the ability to arrest those problems because of the financial constraints they're under with their ownership. 17th. 16th, I've actually gone for Crystal Palace. I think they might take a little bit of a step back. It's 7 years now in a row that they've finished between 11th and 14th. I think this could be the season they take a slight step back. I think the exit of Wilf Zaha is so big. It can't be underestimated. Not only in his goal-scoring numbers, where he consistently has put up 7+ goals. You know, the season before last, I think it was 14 goals. But also his ability to drive the team forward as an outlet on that left-hand side. It's a massive loss. Michael Olise injured again and facing, you know, supposed interest from Manchester City and Chelsea. If they were to lose him, you're losing two hubs of the side. There's just too much pressure on Eze if that happens. Frank has obviously come in. You know, big money from Brazil, a huge prospect, but it's a big ask to get him to produce what Wilfried Zaha has been able to produce in that 400+ appearances over his Crystal Palace career, because he's effectively one of their greatest ever players, if not the greatest ever player. In the middle of the pitch as well, I do like the signing of Lerma, but behind Lerma and Doucouré, they feel a bit light. At right back, they feel a bit light. Gaeta is refusing to play, refusing to train in goal. So Johnston's going to have to play. I think there are some problems at Crystal Palace. By the end of the window, they might well have moved up back into that 11th to 14th area for me. But as we stand today, not done enough. In 15th, I've got Nottingham Forest. Now, they were 16th last season, but they haven't lost a Brennan Johnson or a Morgan Gibbs-White. They were much more settled across the second half of the campaign. Their home record reflected that. I think the addition of Anthony Elanga plays perfectly into their transition-based football. And I think they finally found a structure in the second half of the season in midfield that worked. And I think Steve Cooper is a good enough manager just to bump them up potentially one or two places. If they get the Dean Henderson deal done as well, and potentially one more name, I think the summer's actually been pretty solid. I think they do need a backup for Awoniyi, obviously their top goal scorer last season. If he gets injured again, then there's problems. But as a transition-based side with a now functioning midfield and Steve Cooper, a much more settled squad, I actually think Forest could be alright this season. 14th, I've gone with Fulham, who are, of course, 10th last season. It seems like Mitrovic is now going to be staying at the club, but I still think they're going to take a little bit of a step back. He was obviously amazing last season, those 14 goals. If they'd have lost him, I think I would have had them even lower. You know, there's still some question marks over the future of Willian, and they've lost Manos Solomon as well, who I know didn't have a huge impact, but he did produce goals, and I think at least was a depth name that could come on impact games. If they get Callum Hudson-Odoi over the line, it's going to be very exciting. Not massively convinced about Raul Jimenez, but Calvin Bassey is definitely an improvement on their centre-back duo. I know he had a bad season at Ajax, but previously at Rangers proved how athletic and strong he was defensively. I just think the bottom half of the Premier League this year feels really weak, really weak. There's some good players down there, but as sides, I'm massively unconvinced. I think so many of these teams are relegation candidates. Fulham just about, for me, above that level. 13th, I've gone for Burnley, who I think are going to be one of the biggest shocks of the season. 101 points in the Championship last season. Only one team, I believe, in the history of the Championship that's gone up with 100 points plus has then got relegated the following year. The last team to do it that went up with 100 points plus, I think, was Wolves. They finished 7th the season after. Some of Burnley's business has been excellent. You know, the Vincent Kompany pull in full effect. They've got money and they are spending it very, very smartly. I think Josh Cullen is going to be vital if they want to play well next season. I think Trafford is a fantastic signing as well. The crucial thing for them is going to be the home record. If they can get the home record right, then they are going to do well. It's a nightmare place to go, Burnley. Nobody wants to go there. And I think they only lost one game at home all season last year. I expect big things from Vincent Kompany. Given the state of some of the teams in the bottom half of the table, I think Burnley could look really good. In 12th, I have gone for West Ham. I've seen a lot of people have them an awful lot lower. Of course, last season they ended up in 14th, but were very much in the relegation conversation for large parts of the season. The issue I've got with them is the Europa League. I think that will set them back a little bit in their development. And, of course, they've lost Declan Rice. But I actually think they've replaced Rice okay in midfield. It's not perfect, but I think Alvarez is excellent. And people aren't talking about signing enough. And I think James Ward-Prowse is pretty solid. I think if they go into the season with a midfield of Alvarez, Ward-Prowse and Paqueta, they've done really well. I think that's a really solid midfield three. Of course, if they lose Paqueta, it's a whole different game. Like, you'd have to drop them way down the table across the second half of the season. He was absolutely immense for them, wasn't he? I think you will probably see some under-18s slot into the side at times, given how excellent they were in the FA Youth Cup last year. I'm thinking of the likes of Freddie Potts. Not massively convinced about the Skamaka sale, because if David Moyes doesn't last the season, he would have been an excellent number 9 for them. I think that rings a little bit of Seb Allaire. And I also think Maguire is a really good bit of business. I think if he comes in as captain, he's immediately their best centre-back. He's an excellent defender in a mid to low block, which is exactly what West Ham are going to do. He's an aerial threat in both boxes. You know, good ground defender. He doesn't have the pace very visibly to play in a high line. But in a team like West Ham, I think he's going to look really good. And I think £30 million is a good fee. They've seemed to halve his wages as well, £100,000 a week. I think West Ham are going to be okay. For all the banter about them not making signings and how terrible the window's been, I think they're going to be absolutely fine. And if David Moyes was to lose his job, you know, there's been reports of that, I imagine West Ham get a really good manager. Lopetegui's going to be available. Graham Potter's going to be available. I'm not that worried about West Ham. In 11th, I've gone for Bournemouth. Now, of course, they finished last season in 15th under Gary O'Neill, who did an excellent job to keep them in the Premier League. He really did. You know, people can talk about his Wolves appointment, but keeping them in the Premier League from the state when Scott Parker left them, I think is an excellent, excellent achievement. However, I do believe it was the right decision to part ways. Iraola was available. Of course, his contract finishing at Vallecano. An excellent season at Vallecano, and by all accounts from people who watch a lot more La Liga than I do, he should be one of the highest rated young coaches in Europe. So I think we're going to see a very different Cherry side. It's going to be very high pressing. They're going to have much better ball retention. But I think some of the January additions were excellent in the likes of Ouattara. And I think some of their summer additions have been unbelievable. You know, Alex Scott, what a coup that is to get that deal done. Even at a club record fee for Bristol City, I think it was £25 million in the end. Kirkes, also another coup, given the calibre of other sides that wanted him. They haven't quite got that Jefferson Lerma replacement through the door yet, but I fully expect them to get that done and dusted. Max Aarons, they've managed to hijack as well. I think that's a really good option at right back, given his age and what we saw for the England under-21 setup. But the defence has got to improve. It has to improve. You know, 4th worst expected goals against in the league. They conceded 71. That can't happen again if they finish 11th. This is either going to go one way or the other. Iraola's either going to be fantastic and they're going to be pushing for a top half finish, or it's going to be a disaster. He's going to be out the door, and Bournemouth are going to be very much in a relegation battle. For me, I think it's going to be the former. 10th, I've got Brentford. I think they're the most middling side in the league. Yes, I know they've got Tony out until January and he scored 20 goals last season, but Thomas Frank, for me, one of the best coaches in the league. I think he'll immediately find a method and a system. He's probably already got a method and a system of how to cope without Ivan Toney and without David Raya. They got Flecken done really, really early, and they completed that Kevin Schade deal. I think it was initially loan last season, very, very early. And I'm just convinced with his coaching, basically. I'm sure he's going to be able to find a method of producing things without Toney. Maybe they don't go as long. You know, David Raya, much has been made of his ability and his long ball completion rate. I think a lot of that was to do with the physicality of Ivan Toney winning headers, bringing players into the game. Maybe this year, with Flecken, he plays a little bit shorter. I really like the addition of Nathan Collins. Brentford are just going to be good again, aren't they? I'm convinced they are. In 9th, stop the video. Stop it. Stop it, Joseph. It's now 7 a.m. Friday morning. Obviously, I shot the video, the majority of which you've watched, on Thursday. Overnight, 2 of the biggest transfers in British history have happened, and they have made some changes to my 1 to 20. Particularly between 8th, 9th, 8th, 7th, and 6th. Last night, my 9876 looked like this. In 9th, I've actually gone for Aston Villa. In 8th, I've got Chelsea. Now, last season, of course, finished 12th. And again, I'm seeing people put them finishing 2nd or 3rd. I think that's an unrealistic jump. 7th, I've got Brighton. 6th, I've gone for Tottenham. Now, of course, I'm doing this as Kane is still staying at the club. That's what we're hearing. Kane is staying at the club, and despite the fact they've agreed a €100 million fee with Bayern Munich, he's going to say no. He's going to stay, which is great for United, by the way. much more likely we're going to sign him on a free transfer next summer. Big changes. Instead of Aston Villa, who last night I had in 9th, I've actually got Tottenham Hotspur. I think I had them 6th yesterday. They're dropping right down without Harry Kane. It's the biggest shocker I've ever seen in terms of timing. The day before the Premier League season, Harry Kane leaves Tottenham. Absolutely horrendous timing for the club. A great move for Harry Kane. In my opinion, don't get some of the Bayern Munich slander at all. He's going there to win Champions Leagues. The squad is unbelievable in Munich right now with his addition. I think it's an amazing move. But for Tottenham, it's a disaster. You take 30 goals out of that squad. I can't have them finishing 6th. And that's where I had them yesterday. So instead, I've got them 9th. And I feel particularly bad for Ange Postecoglou in there. I think he was going to have a really impressive season. I feel bad for James Maddison. He won't have the link up. And he might well prove me wrong, because I think Ange will get production out of Richarlison. He needs to get more than his sort of 10-goal average in terms of production. But if he does, maybe I would have been right yesterday. And they end up finishing 6th. In 8th, I've now got Brighton. Today, I don't think loads has changed. I still love Roberto De Zerbi, but I do feel like without Moises Caicedo, that drops them a place. I think he is their outstanding player. Definitely their outstanding deep-lying midfielder. And the additions of De Hood and James Milner aren't quite at the level of McAllister and Caicedo. Caicedo in particular, I feel like is a big drop-off to the players replacing him, even though I'm expecting big things from Billy Gilmour this year. So I'm just going to drop them slightly. The big winners of this whole situation are probably Aston Villa, who are moving up to 7th. But with rivals losing players like Harry Kane and Moises Caicedo, I think you've got to jump them a couple places. Unai Emery's that good of a coach. They're going to be very solid, and they're much more settled. In 6th now is Chelsea. I just think that without Caicedo, Brighton drop a bit, and Spurs definitely drop without Harry Kane. And if they do get Romeo Lavia done, it's not Caicedo level, but it's still a very good addition. So weirdly, despite being major losers for not signing Caicedo, it might help them out because it damages rivals so much. But it only damages rivals in that little bracket. Now that Liverpool have got Caicedo, it takes them miles clear of Chelsea. I think there's a big gap now following the sales of Harry Kane and Caicedo in the top 5 to the next 5. Getting close to the top 4 now, but you've got to remember, it's likely the top 5 you're going to get Champions League in the Premier League this year. Because of the changes to the Champions League format and the coefficient effect, it's likely 5 upwards is going to be a Champions League side. So it's really should start talking about this as the top 5. Where I think Newcastle will be back in the Champions League because I think they're going to finish 5th. I think the Champions League will have some effect on the squad just because they haven't played in it for 20 years. It's bound to have a bit of effect playing Wednesday and Saturday. But I still think they're one of the most settled sides in the league. I think they've got one of the best defences in the league. You know, joint best defensive record last season. And I think the squad has got markedly better. And I think some of the players within it are only going to improve. You know, Botman, a year older. Isaac, a year older. Bruno Guimaraes, a year more into his Premier League development. They're not going to get worse. Like, Tonali's come into the midfield. I think Livramento's an amazing pickup. Harvey Barnes is probably going to score 10 goals from the left-hand side, which I think they were missing goals from wide last year because Isaac had a bit of a patchy injury record. People talking about Newcastle finishing like 8th. I just don't see it. Like, they're such a solid side. Eddie Howe's done such an excellent job there. They're not going to be playing Thursday, Sunday. I think Newcastle are going to be very good next year. It's me interrupting again because obviously I've got to talk about Moises Caicedo and Liverpool. I'm going to keep Liverpool in 4th. However, obviously some changes in there. I think they have signed one of the best young defensive midfielders in the world. It's a huge overpay. Let's get over that. British record transfer. But he is amazing. And he is perfect for that Liverpool deep-lying role. The ability to rotate into that right-back slot, as we saw at Brighton with Trent Alexander-Arnold, is a scary thought. He's so energetic, such a high presser. He's perfect for Jurgen Klopp. He is perfect for Jurgen Klopp and certainly immediately takes him level on par with Manchester United, who I'm going to talk about in just a second. Immediately takes him up to potentially outside pushes for a title charge. But it might take a little bit of time to gel. It's an entirely new midfield 3, so I don't think they quite get up alongside Manchester United, who just feel a little bit more settled right now. But the firepower's amazing. The midfield's amazing. If they can get a centre-back before deadline day, Liverpool might even jump to 3rd. In 3rd, I've gone for Manchester United. I just don't think they score enough goals to challenge City or Arsenal. I think at the back they're going to be very, very solid again. You know, the back line was very settled. Lisandro Martinez, Rafa Varane. It looks like they're going to upgrade the replacement. Maybe Benjamin Pavard, who would be an excellent signing, coming in. He can also offer something at right back. They've got a better midfield. But the forward line just is a risk. You never know. Højlund could bang. If Højlund bangs and scores 20 goals, then obviously we're talking about a potential title contending side. I just am not convinced that's going to happen. I think he'll be good, but I think he might score like 12 goals, which doesn't compete with Arsenal and City. You know, 58 goals last season. That's not title-winning numbers. 1 and 2. I really wanted to put Arsenal at 1. Like, obviously I want Arsenal to win the league over City because I don't want to see City do a 4-peat for the first time in English football history. And I think Arsenal could do it. The only issue is City are City. And, you know, treble winners, I think only once in recorded history has a treble winner not gone on to win the league the season after. They've added Gvardiol. I think he's great defensive depth. I think Kovacic will look more and more natural throughout the season. I mean, against Arsenal at the weekend, he looked like he'd been playing in that side for a decade. He's such a City player. They definitely need a right winger. And I think there might be a little bit of motivational challenge. Certainly, I don't see them winning the treble again. That's going to come back to bite me. But I see them getting the business done. I think City might go like 92 points, Arsenal 90, United 85, and then United look to get Kane on a free, and that's how they'll compete. Not this season, the season after. So that was my 1 to 20. I want to hear from you guys at home. How many did you agree with? How many did you disagree with? Let me know your 1 to 20 in the comments below. I'm sure I'm getting abused beyond belief right now. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe. We'll see you next time.